There were once some 52,816 miles of paved roads spanning the Roman Empire. Even as the empire collapsed, cities and towns, traditions and cultures continued to thrive along the roadside. Take the Via Julia, a Roman route through country once known as Noricum and Raetia, crossing through Swabian Bavaria and over Upper Bavaria into Austria. The road connected Augsburg via Rosenheim to Salzburg as part of a greater road between Constantinople and Lutetia. A Roman military route, it was only given the name Julia in the 19th century. Between Swabia and Bavaria lies the city of Günzburg. The Romans named it Guntia in honor of the Celtic river deity, whose cult they also adopted. Founded by the Emperor Vespasian in 77 AD, Günzburg was home to a 1,000-strong unit of elite cavalry. It lies to the west of the Via Julia and is the location of the largest Roman burial grounds ever discovered north of the Alps, with over 1,800 exposed graves that span 5 centuries. Around 1,400 grave inventories bear witness to rich burial customs, from cremations to family plots, and burial urns of the finest glass. Günzburg's modern cemetery was established in 1805 and lies next to the Roman burial grounds.
Nobody's ever run off when I say I'm a gravedigger. It's quite acceptable here in Bavaria, because we used to collect the dead as well. These days, the funeral parlor does that. My name is Martin Schmidt. I dig graves and keep the cemetery tidy.
Okay.
These days, hardly anybody is ever laid out. It's mainly just the Russians and Romanians here that do that. Their way of saying goodbye is a lot more intense than us Germans. Dying, no longer being here, it's forever. You don't come back when you're dead. I deal with death every day, but I don't think about it anymore. You have to be able to switch off. Some people take it home with them, carry it around in their heads. You have to stop doing that. It may be a cemetery, but you can still joke around a bit. On the whole, though, this is just where I work, where I earn my living.
It feels wonderful. I like this figure because it's very in keeping with the time when my father made it. And back then, from a Christian point of view, the resurrection was very important. My name is Wolfgang Hummel. I'm a stonemason and master stone sculptor, and I've been working here in Günzburg for over 40 years in the local cemetery. Stone always feels great. Anyone who works with stone will always touch it. The cemetery is very important to me, and I really regret the fact that so much of the tradition of my profession is being lost through the changing approach to burial. It's clear to me that there's not much call for religious sculptures these days. A lot of the orders we get are just the suggestions people have had foisted upon them from catalogs. When I was a little boy, a young lad died in a tragic accident. And the parents came to my father and said, "Your son looks like our dead son. He can be the model." And that's why it's a pretty accurate likeness of me. It was a struggle for me to stay still, kneeling until my father had finished the clay model.
Further along the Via Julia are the Alpen rivers Lech and Wertach. Between them lies Augsburg, founded in the year 15 BC as a military camp. Within 100 years, it had become Augusta Vindelicum, capital city of the new Roman province of Raetia. It was at this time that its architect, the Emperor Augustus, turned the Roman Republic into the Roman Empire. Even back in ancient Rome, plaster was used for decoration. Limestone sculptures were covered in a layer of plaster and smoothed over to be brightly painted. With the fall of the Roman Empire, the tradition of stucco also fell apart, buried and forgotten under ruins for over 1,000 years.
Back then, I had to make casts for the Roman Museum. And so, of course, I was in there often and had to look at everything. During my apprenticeship, it was completely renovated, and I was allowed to help. It was also being converted into the Roman Museum at that time. That was over 50 years ago. For me, the whole point of being a restorer working in a church is that if there's a piece of plasterwork missing, you complete it so it all looks whole again. My name is Werner Schwentner. I'm a trained stucco plasterer, and I'm also a qualified restorer and sculptor. Even as a child, I wanted to be an artist or sculptor. I hadn't heard of being a stucco plasterer. My father worked at the post office, so he had to be out of the house at 4 in the morning. He read about it in the paper and said, "Now there's something you might like to be." So I jumped on my bike, got the apprentice master out of bed, and that's how I got the apprenticeship. That's just the bells of the Catholic Church ringing. It's a great shame to throw a Madonna like this away. It could have been displayed out on the wall of a building. Most of them are beautiful, from a sculptural perspective as well. And you can see with what passion these artists tried to bring the figure to life back then. Take this figure. When you look at the face, it's so graceful. Perhaps that's also the connection to the mother that you see, or are reminded of, in every Madonna. My wife would definitely say it's a hideaway. I first really began collecting when I was in charge of a children's play park. And I got interested in the things the children used to play with. And suddenly there was this collection of children's toys. Added to that, there were a number of things I could use as templates, like models, animals, and so on. So it always had a little bit to do with work. It's about time to tidy up.
Königsbrunn. Its cemetery contains the ruins of a Mithraeum, the only one remaining in the former province of Raetia, with its mysterious cult for men only. In cave-like rooms, they'd pay homage to Mithras, the ruler of the world, depicted as the victorious bull slayer. Mithraism was the forerunner of Christianity and was very similar in both its practice and its beliefs. In the 4th century, the cult of Mithras came to an abrupt end when Christianity was declared the state religion. None of the names of the Roman routes north of the Alps have been handed down, except that of the nearby Via Claudia Augusta. The Via Julia was named in the 19th century.
What fascinates me about the Romans is their structure, their austerity, their clarity. That means their buildings, their road construction. And one of these Roman roads runs through my hometown, Kissing. Even before I went to school, I knew there was a Roman road in Kissing. The Via Julia ran right through the hall where our test division made their prototypes. My name is Heinz Schmidt. I'm an amateur archaeologist. This part of the Roman road is known today as the Via Julia. Via Julia is not an historically accurate name. When you look at the historical facts, to use the name the Via Julia is questionable, to say the least. We know from the links between the finds made in this fort that we're living on a street that dates back to the Emperor Augustus. Here we're in a former Roman fort from the early imperial era. It's fascinating to me to hold a 2,000-year-old piece in my hand and to know that a Roman lost this, or made it, or ate or drank from it. Cultural history fascinates me. It moves me.
The landscape of old Bavaria, home to the culture of the Bajuwaren, the ancient Bavarians. The Roman road also led through Jesenbang. Right to its embankment, the pilgrimage church of St. Willibald. It's famous for its Willibaldsritt, an old tradition of blessing the horses that dates back to 1712, when it was seen as protection from the ravages of horse plague. Over 300 horses ride through the church to receive their annual blessing. During this ritual, Leo Schmidt becomes a kind of crusader.
I've been doing it for 15 years. I lead the procession. But before we ride through the church of St. Willibald and receive the priest's blessing, they take the cross from me because it won't fit through the door. It's very moving when we ride through the church. I think it's really something unique. What bothers me recently is that many traditions are just being dropped because the priest hasn't got the time and no one goes anymore. Tradition is certainly very important to me.
My name is Josef Meyer, and I'm a farmer. We even have a family tree. What's interesting is that there's only ever been female descendants, so men always had to marry into the family. So I'm the... what generation is it now? I think it's the 12th or the 15th.
Ich glaube, die 12. oder 15.
St. Willibald is an oath. I rode alongside for years and now I'm involved in the organization. Horses are a real elixir of life. When you get close to animals and you understand them, it's just the greatest thing. They used to say, if your woman dies, it's no great loss. But woe to you if you lose your horse. You couldn't do anything without a horse. It's an old, old saying. And back then, the men, or rather the farmers, could get away with it. But not these days.
I rode the young mare for the first time in the cross procession because Berta couldn't do it anymore. She'd been doing it for 15 years. This year I rode the 7-year-old chestnut mare without any mistakes.
With no problems?
With no problems. That's Berta. 20 years ago I started breeding from her. It was love at first sight. When I bought her at 2 years old, She couldn't do a thing, and neither could I. I'd never sat on a horse before, but the two of us managed excellently. Yes, she's going into retirement now because she's 22, or she will be. Bertha has been my life until now, so I'm sad and I'll probably need a day or two. But I won't cry, because she's just an animal, and you have to still know the difference. That's the South German draft horse. Quiet, even-tempered, sometimes touchy, as women occasionally are, but otherwise a very quiet, placid character. Once I saw a man just put his hand on a horse's back and say, "Go on, go one step forward." And the horse actually took just one step forward. That was so fascinating to me that I went home and said, I'm buying myself one of those.
I
am a believer. I'm not necessarily a churchgoer who attends church every Sunday. But when I'm on horseback and pass a wayside cross, I always stop and say an Our Father to myself. Sunday is my horse day. That's when we go for a ride. That's how it is.
Further along the Roman road, every 25 Roman miles is a mansio, a stopping point like this one in Schöngeising. In ancient times, they were known as Ambrae, from the banks of the Amper. This is where the Via Raetia, the road leading through the Brenner Pass, crossed the Via Julia. The Via Julia. These days, it's a bicycle route that runs through the Alpine foothills of Bavaria, crossing Rosenheim, past Zeebrugg on the Chiemsee, and over the Austrian border to Salzburg. It was one of the most strategic roads of the Roman Empire. Between Eying and Peiss, the Via Julia crossed the Roman stopping point of Isiniska. As a small part of a consular road, it connected the Imperium Romanum from the Black Sea to Gaul, as we can see from 15 milestones, or miliaria, from the time of Emperor Septimius Severus. Even today, the east-west course is clearly visible beneath the fields. Not far from the Roman road lies Kirchseon. The town and its customs grew up in the wake of a natural disaster. In 1899, a plague of nun moths destroyed the entire forest region. Many Austrians helped to rebuild the area, bringing with them a particular custom called Perchten.
Robert, where are you? Shall we do some carving? My name is Herbert Schaffbauer. I'm a qualified draftsman and I've been carving masks as a hobby since I was 10 years old. I've made almost 70 pieces since then. This is a Glaubaufmaske. It says, "You can't annoy me, I'll annoy you." In other words, I've carved my spirit into the mask. Robert, where are you? Shall we do some carving?
I'm already here, we can start.
I'm always asked, do you do drawings? I always say, by the time I'd have finished a drawing, half the mask would already be carved.
Herbert, can you take a look and tell me which knife I should use for the nose?
You should take this knife and go in the middle. There.
Okay, ja.
I have a broad range of knowledge. I'm in the middle of putting it all into writing. And of course, it's a huge undertaking, teaching the young lads. Because they need a whole year to produce a mask that would take me perhaps 2 weeks to make.
Look, Herbert, I've got another broken mask to repair.
Well, what's happened this time?
It fell forward walking.
I'll need a day to mend it, to glue it, and then to repaint it.
Shall I put it down here for you?
Put it down and I'll do it as soon as I can get round to it.
Herbert's really a bit too modest. Of course, the masks are wonderful, as well as the painting. It's an art form. But the greatest art, the most important one for us walking in the parade, is that we can wear the masks for 5.5 hours and dance in them without having blisters and a bleeding face afterwards. This is our life. The two of us have been doing it for over 40 years. We've grown into it, and we're inseparable. We too and the Perchten. I'm Wolfgang Uberacker. I've been on the Perchten Board of Directors for 12 years. We have a very broad age range, and over a third are girls. Social get-togethers are as much a part of it as keeping the traditions alive. I lead the bunch. I have the so-called devil's violin, a staff with 2 cymbals. I give the orders. My mask is called Perat, the bright one, the beautiful one. It comes from the word Percht. The Percht is always something beautiful. We want to wake up nature with all our noise, so that next year, everything will grow again. And there's an old saying, as high as Percht jumps, shall grow the corn next year. The second thing we do is a type of incantation. We banish bad luck from the home and yard for a year. But only a year, of course. We want to come back again next year. The most important figure is Mrs. Percht, a Janus head. It's always in the center. It's our main character. It's both sexes, man and woman, light and dark, summer and winter. It's basically all the opposites of life. And the Glaubauf dance all around Mrs. Percht, accompanied by the sound of bells and chants.
I still go on almost every parade and watch the followers with their lights and fires. The difference between these and carnival masks is that they have scarves at the back, while we have horse tails. They used to be made of flax. But sometimes the head would catch fire, and the guy wearing it would end up bald. That's why we use horsehair now. It smolders away for perhaps an inch or two, but it doesn't harm anyone.
The Rosenheim Basin, a landscape formed by a bygone glacial lake. The Romans arrived here as early as 15 BC, led by Drusus and Tiberius, stepsons of the Emperor Augustus. On the left bank of the river Inn, they founded the province of Noricum. And on the right, Raetia. The river Inn became the boundary. Rosenheim. Nearby was Germany's second largest producer of Roman tableware, Terra Sigillata. This earthenware, developed in Italian workshops at the end of the 1st century BC, was to become one of the main sources of revenue for the inhabitants of Pons Aeni. Even back then, production was industrialized with the use of molds and castings. Next to the discarded failed firings are traces of 2,000-year-old fingerprints and animal prints in the clay. In the 1st century AD, at the northern edge of Rosenheim, the occupants erected a military station to protect their river bridge. Out of this grew the settlement of Pons Aeni, the Inn Bridge. "2,000 years later, a group of people here have formed a cultural association. Their main interest is local Roman history from the Middle and Late Imperial era, from 200 to 400 AD.
Limitanae Pontinensis.
Limitanae Pontinensis means Pfaffenhofen on the Inn. A Limitanae unit was stationed here, border guards recruited from the neighboring population. That's what we're trying to recreate here. My name is Peter Engel, and I work for a large company in Munich as project leader for technical documentation. We've reconstructed all of our equipment based on original findings. I was already fascinated by the Romans by the time I bought a book on them at the age of 11. How a little place or village or several villages could become such a huge world power. How they organized and developed themselves. How they got to all sorts of places. What they built. The more I learned about the Romans, the more I realized that the time around 200 AD is actually much more interesting than how it is depicted in Hollywood films. I got interested in the Roman roads too because there was an important east-west route between Augsburg and Salzburg just here. And of course, how they measured the roads. How did they set it all up? Did they measure it all? And there was a troop like us now. Back then, there was a little special troop of engineers out and about, measuring the roads bit by bit.
A little to the right. Looks good.
Gut. Schaut ganz gut, oder? Ja.
We also have women in the club who are busy with antique fabrics. How were they made? How were they dyed? How were they woven? Legionnaires back then even had socks that were knitted in what's called knotless knitting.
Can you pass me the needles, please?
It fascinates us. We also try to make our own footwear. The Romans made footwear for both the left and the right foot. That knowledge got lost and was only rediscovered in the late 18th century, when people began again to make shoes for the left and right foot. Cooking is my passion. Peaches with beetroot in a honey pepper sauce. Then you add the herbs, such as common rue and lovage, which was like the herb stock of antiquity. A typical Roman vegetable side dish, served with fish or meat, or just with bread. I find it exciting to cook these dishes in the camp over an open fire. No, I can't imagine living in Roman times, because I'm a child of the modern age.
The path of the Via Julia crosses the Chiemgau, with its Bavarian sea, the Chiemsee. Seebruck, already discovered by the Romans, grew up on its shores. Back then it was an ancient spa known as Bedaium. Founded in 41 AD under Emperor Claudius, the Church of St. Thomas and St. Stephen. Built on and mostly out of stones of a late Roman fort. Bedaium was not just the bridge over the Alps. It was also a bridgehead to safeguard the highway from Augsburg to Salzburg. Bedaium owes its name to a river god, Bedaius, a Celtic cult adopted by the Romans, characteristic of the Chiemsee. Where Roman ships once rode across the Lacus Bedaius, today tourists sail towards the island.
Actually, I love the water, but I just don't like going into it. Why? I don't need to bathe in it. It's right at my doorstep. This has all been lying around for 35 years. Model ships, that's how it all got started. This is a model of the last paddle steamer to cross the Chiemsee. I built it when I was still at school. It has nothing to do with becoming an adult. There was a certain time, and that time is past. Now my models are just a little bigger. My name is Peter Heierstracher, and I build boats on the Fraueninsel. I construct them all myself, do the calculations and the design. Can you see anything? Of course, we've built the occasional construction that's been a bit different, not exactly a sport or leisure boat. The style's like a Mississippi steamboat. It was for an amusement park. That's one of the more unusual ones. My great-grandfather started the business in 1819. Back then it was still woodwork, joinery, carpentry, and of course boats for the islanders, fishermen. And also for the first water sportsmen. They had them back then, and now I'm doing it. There's a lot of engineering involved in a ship like this, from the wood to the plastic, metal and furnishings, right through to the expensive electronics, like a little driving computer. The man in the boat is Robert. He's installing all the lithium technology. Those are the batteries for our powerful electric motor.
Actually, it was born of necessity, because it's forbidden to use petrol to travel across the lake, so there are no more exhaust fumes. And the other thing is that it's also really lovely to travel across the water so quietly. You only hear the waves, and there aren't any sounds from the motor. That's pretty fascinating.
Yes, a V8 motor like in the old days has its appeal. But everything's becoming quieter, environmentally friendly. What do I think about when I cross the Chiemsee in one of my boats? A bit of freedom, independence, and the connection to wind and weather, movement on the water. The customer enjoying it without complications, and the boat fulfilling the customer's expectations. And of course, the way from A to B is part of it. Yes, I'm a little proud of what I do and what we've done.
In the distance, the state of Salzburg. In 15 BC, Roman legions took the area, which would later become the province of Noricum, without a fight. So began a rule that lasted almost 500 years, a rule over land that included the Celtic city of Iuvavum, today known as Salzburg. The city's heyday was at the time of the Emperor Claudius. Residenzplatz in Salzburg is a window onto Roman Iuvavum. In excavations about 3 feet deep, 10,000 objects from the past 2,000 years have been uncovered. Jewelry and pieces of clothing attest to the existence of workshops that processed and produced metal, specializing in the creation of brooches, clasps, belt parts, and horses' harnesses. A more modern jewelry tradition was also almost forgotten. the South German and Austrian traditional golden bonnet, the Goldhaube.
At the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s, that's when the era of the Goldhaube, the gold bonnets, began, with Biedermeier dresses made of heavy silk. And our association was founded in 1956 to carry on and preserve the tradition. Firstly, it's important that the dress is made of pure silk. Artificial silk is frowned upon. Makeup, only very discreet. Red fingernails and so on are very frowned upon, and bright red lipstick is an absolute no-no. Modern makeup is not acceptable. But it's not raining, I just want to say. Of course, not a modern umbrella, that's impossible. It has to be a lovely, traditional costume umbrella. I've led the association for 12 years. My name is Gerlinde Wolfsgruber, and I'm the honorary chairwoman of the Golden Goldhaube group of Mozart City, Salzburg. The gauze bonnet would be the lightest one, right? Naturally, it's the lightest.
I'm a passionate dirndl wearer. I learned it from my parents back at home. On Sundays, you wear lederhosen and dirndl. My name is Monika Schläger, and I'm the deputy chairwoman. That's another thing that inspired me to do it, that got me into producing golden bonnets, because there's no one else. The farm women aren't doing it anymore. They can't see so well. It's very difficult. So I looked around for a farm woman, and she taught me how to stitch golden bonnets. It takes up to 200 hours of work until every stitch is in place, and the golden bonnet is finished.
Oh, but you are fast.
Yes, the more richly embroidered the bonnet, the longer it takes. That's just for dancing.
I feel young again. I'm a young girl again.
They used to call them girlhoods. That's why, Margit. That's why you felt so young again.
Yes, exactly.
My name is Reinhilde Kirchsteigl. I'm the new chairwoman. And now I'm at the top. It's a lovely and responsible job, but quite honestly, I rather underestimated it. It's not easy to reconcile so many people. The requests and needs of each one, even just considering their ages and differing attitudes, it's very hard to bring them all together.
I'm not just dressing up. It's part of me, and I feel great. No one can insult me with disparaging words. I stand by it. It's mine.
I have no problem with going into town, where all around me, they're all taking photos, and people are looking. You have to be able to take it. It's a never-ending stream of please and stand next to her and constant photos. What bothers me a little is the young ones, especially the young men, who don't know what it really means. How it's a wonderful thing to dress beautifully in the clothing of your home, as is customary here.
Here, at the foot of the Hohensalzburg fortress, ends our journey along the Roman road, the Via Julia.